This isn't a shelter. Get out. The word stopped Jackson Reeves mid-step. He hadn't even reached the buffet line. The man behind the sneeze guard, wearing a wrinkled white apron and a faded baseball cap pulled low, obscuring his eyes, hadn't noticed him yet. Jackson stood quietly, his grip tightening on the tray in his hands. He had checked in under a fake name, Frank L., through a mystery dining app his company used for field audits. There were 13 locations in total, spread across 3 states. The East Columbus branch had always been a middle-of-the-road performer. Not great, not terrible. But recently, the numbers had begun to slip. Margins were thinning and staff turnover was rising. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to trigger his instinct. He needed to see it with his own eyes. 8 years ago, Jackson bought the buffet chain from a retired couple who had run it with love, but little structure. The recipes were solid, real mashed potatoes, slow-roasted brisket, no shortcuts. But the service had been inconsistent. Jackson had spent years rebuilding, streamlining systems, setting standards, and paying above minimum wage wherever he could. He had trusted the new regional team to keep things steady. Perhaps he'd trusted too much. He hadn't visited this branch since before the pandemic. Now, standing under the flickering fluorescent bulbs in a battered green hoodie and scuffed jeans, Jackson looked more like someone on his lunch break from a warehouse than the owner of anything. With a slight southern drawl and no name tag, no one would have guessed he was a man whose signature was still on the founding documents. A customer was being spoken down to at the front counter. He wasn't shouting or holding up the line. He just stood quietly to the side, near the cash register. Gray stubble dusted his sunken cheeks, and his coat was 2 sizes too large. He looked to be in his mid-50s, worn down, not dirty, simply tired. "Sir," the buffet worker said again, louder this time, "you can't just hang around hoping for scraps. If you want food, you pay like everyone else." The man didn't respond, at least not in any way Jackson could hear. "I don't care if you're hungry," the employee snapped. "Go to a shelter or something. You're creeping people out." Jackson's jaw clenched. A few feet away at the salad bar, a young woman with coiled, dark curls paused mid-refill on the cherry tomatoes. Her name tag read Tasha Green. She glanced between the man and her co-worker, her eyes narrowing not in fear, but in disappointment. She wiped her hands, bent down behind the counter, and pulled a small white plate from beneath the steam table. Without asking anyone, without making a sound, she walked over and handed it to the man. "Here," she said softly. "Just keep it quiet, okay?" He blinked at her, as if unsure the plate was real, then took it. "Thank you," he whispered. The male employee, a tall man with a flushed face, his sleeves rolled too tightly, slammed his serving spoon onto the hot bar. "Are you serious, Tasha? You're going to feed every stray who wanders in now." She didn't even turn to face him. "He's a person, Chad." Jackson stepped forward and handed the cashier his fake ticket. "1 dinner buffet," he said. The girl behind the register didn't glance up. "That's 17 even." He paid in cash, took his plate, and walked the line slowly, observing everything. Chad muttered something under his breath and stormed to the back, banging trays like a drum solo. Jackson sat near the rear of the dining room, where he could see both the counter and the man in the far corner, hunched over the plate Tasha had given him. He was eating slowly, carefully, as if making every bite last. Tasha returned to her station. Chad leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone. Jackson didn't touch his food. After about 15 minutes, he got up and strolled to the drink machine. As he filled a cup with water he didn't want, he leaned slightly toward the salad bar. "Hey," he said casually, "that guy you helped, does he come around often?" Tasha hesitated. "Sometimes. Not always. He doesn't bother anyone." "Management okay with it?" She gave a tight smile. "Management doesn't really care, unless a customer complains." "You ever get in trouble?" "Chad reported me once. I got a verbal warning. No paperwork, just a note in passing." "You always help like that?" "If I can." Jackson nodded slowly. "Thanks. That was decent of you." She looked surprised. "Thanks," she said quietly. He walked out the front door and stood still for a moment, staring at the cracked tile along the entrance and the flickering neon sign overhead. It buzzed against the wind, as if struggling to keep itself alive. The paint was peeling along the window frames. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to say, no one's paying attention anymore. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Hey, it's Jackson. I need you to call a manager's meeting. First thing tomorrow. Store 13. Something's wrong. We're not who we claim to be." He hung up, taking one last glance through the glass. Chad was still on his phone. Tasha was back to prepping greens. The man with the plate was gone, but the moment lingered. Jackson arrived before the doors opened. The lot was still mostly empty. Just a few cars scattered across the cracked asphalt, which glistened from the previous night's drizzle. It was a kind of morning where your breath misted and your patience wore thin. He parked around the side, out of view from the front windows, and made his way to the employee entrance. The key fob still worked, a spare he'd kept from the early years, when he used to open this place himself on weekends to cover for no-shows. Back when he knew every station, every shortcut, and every name on the schedule. A few heads turned as he stepped inside. No one said anything at first, just the hum of the walking compressor, and the buzz of the prep light overhead. A dishwasher was loading trays, earbuds in, one of the fry cooks, a kid with a lip piercing and flour on his sleeve, chopped onions at a stainless prep table, his eyes watering. Two servers leaned against the far counter, their aprons still folded at their waists, scrolling through their phones, oblivious to what was coming. Jackson kept walking straight to the break room. It was smaller than he remembered. The vending machine blinked an error message. The corkboard on the wall still held old flyers tacked between faded announcements. Shift coverage requests, CPR training, someone selling used tires. He stood there for a moment, breathing it in. The smell of yesterday's bleach, stale coffee, and fried food clung to the air like an old regret. Then the door opened. A woman in her early 40s walked in, a clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other. Her ponytail was tight, her eyes quick and sharp. She glanced up and froze. "Oh," she stammered. "Mr. Reeves." "Morning, Marla," Jackson said evenly. Marla Jenkins, the store manager. She shifted instantly, her posture straightening. I didn't know you were visiting today." "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. "Of course. Should I get the district manager on the line?" "No," Jackson replied. "I already spoke with him. This needs to start here." He turned and led the way back toward the dining room. The chairs were still flipped onto the tables. The floor smelled faintly of mop water and fryer grease. A fan buzzed near the register. Light streamed into the front windows, catching specks of dust that floated in slow, aimless patterns. Jackson gestured toward a booth near the front. Marla sat without a word, her coffee now clutched in both hands. "I was here last night," Jackson said plainly, her eyebrows pulled together. "Last night? You mean as a customer?" "I came in under a different name," he continued. "Sat in the back. Watched how your team interacts with guests. Watched how they treat each other." Marla sat straighter, her grip on the coffee tightening. "I didn't know. I mean, I wasn't on the floor. I was—" "You wouldn't have noticed," Jackson said. "That's the point. I learned there's a reason the store's numbers are slipping, and it's not the quality of food." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. "It's the culture," he said. "It's what you allow to happen when you're not watching. Or worse, what you've seen and ignored." "I run a tight ship," Marla said quickly. "We follow protocols." "We?" "Protocols didn't stop one of your employees from humiliating a man who was just hungry." Marla's face paled. "Was there an incident?" "There was a man," Jackson said quietly, "who didn't yell, didn't steal, didn't make a scene. He stood there, quiet and hungry, hoping someone would offer him basic decency. Instead, he was publicly ridiculed." She looked down. "And the person who did offer kindness," Jackson continued, "was treated like she was a problem, not just by her co-worker, but by your silence." "I didn't know." "No," Jackson said. "You didn't, because you weren't on the floor. Because you've been managing from the back room, letting someone like Chad run your front end." Marla's eyes flicked upward again. Chad's not a manager. He doesn't need a title to set the tone, Jackson replied. People follow the loudest voice in the room when no one else steps up. Right now, that voice belongs to someone who has no business leading. He's been here a long time, she said. 6 years. He trains the new hires, covers doubles, handles weekend rushes. And that gives him the right to decide who deserves dignity. Marla went silent. I want him gone, Jackson said. She blinked. You want me to terminate him? I'm not asking. He's finished. And if there are others like him, I want to know. This isn't about hitting sales targets. This is about who we are. Marla nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Understood. Jackson stood. Bring the team in. I want to speak to them before we open. Without waiting, he walked back toward the kitchen. Behind him, the clatter of chairs being pulled down and the hurried shuffle of feet echoed faintly. A ripple was beginning to form, and the wave was coming. They gathered in the dining area just before the first shift. Chairs were down now. The lights were up. There was no background music yet, just a low murmur of servers, prep staff, and line cooks finding places to stand. Jackson waited by the window, arms crossed, watching as each team member trickled in. Tasha Green stood near the back, hands loosely clasped in front of her. Her eyes flicked to Jackson, cautious and unsure. The young cashier from the night before hovered near the drink station, avoiding eye contact. Chad Rooker strolled in last, yawning, his apron already wrinkled, phone in hand. But they weren't alone. The man from the previous night was back. He lingered quietly near the front entrance, holding a small plastic bag in one hand. No tray, no plate, just something wrapped in napkins. No one stopped him. He looked around, spotted Tasha, and took a step forward. I'm sorry, he said softly. I didn't mean to interrupt. He held out the bag like an offering. She gave me food yesterday. I didn't know how to say thank you, so I brought some pastries from the shelter downtown. They're not fresh, but I wanted to give something back. The room froze. Chad exhaled sharply. Are you kidding me? You seriously came back, man? We don't need this circus right now. Tasha stepped forward instinctively, but she didn't get the chance to speak. Jackson did. That's enough, he said. His voice was quiet, but it sliced through the silence like a blade. Chad turned confused, perhaps annoyed, until Jackson walked fully into view. My name is Jackson Reeves, he said. I own this company. No one gasped, but posture shifted. Several employees straightened. A few stepped back. I was here last night, Jackson continued. Sat in the back and watched what happened. I saw how this man was treated when he asked for help, and I saw who stepped up when no one else did. Chad scoffed. You're kidding. Jackson didn't blink. No, I'm not. The older man at the door looked like he wanted to disappear. Jackson turned to him. Sir, thank you for coming back. You are not the problem. You never were. The man nodded quietly and turned to leave. Jackson let him go, then faced the team. I want to be clear, he said. What I saw yesterday goes against everything this company stands for. Every single thing. He looked directly at Chad. You humiliated someone vulnerable in front of customers. You mocked him for being poor. And when a colleague tried to show basic human decency, you ridiculed her too. Chad shifted his weight, crossing his arms. With all due respect, I didn't know who he was. We get people like that all the time. You start handing out food, they never stop coming. You're done, Jackson said flatly. Chad blinked. Wait, what? You're no longer employed here. You can collect your things and leave now. Chad looked around the room. You can't be serious. I've worked here for 6 years. I cover weekends, train half this floor. You're firing me over one guy. Jackson stepped closer. Not over one guy. I'm firing you because you decided to speak for this company without permission, because you believe doing your job, gives you the right to decide who deserves dignity. It doesn't. Chad's jaw clenched. He turned to Marla. You're just going to let this happen? Marla stood off to the side, her arms folded. She didn't say a word. No one. Chad asked again. Really? No one moved. He dropped his key card on the nearest table, muttered something under his breath, and stormed out to the back. Silence settled again. Jackson turned to the rest of the staff. "I'm not here to scare anyone," he said. "I'm here to fix what's broken. And that starts with accountability." He looked at Tasha. "You stepped up. You didn't ask for credit. You didn't make a scene. You just did the right thing. That matters." She blinked. "Thank you. Starting today, you're the lead server. You'll get a raise, and I want to talk with you about assistant management training." She looked stunned, but nodded once. He let the moment breathe, then addressed the group. "This place doesn't need to be perfect, but it has to be decent. From now on, if someone needs help, we help. If someone disrespects a guest or a coworker, they're out. No warnings, no excuses." Everyone stood still. There was no pushback, just silence and a slow, dawning understanding. Jackson pulled out a chair and flipped it down onto the floor. "I'll be here all day," he said, watching, listening, and helping where needed. He sat. "Let's open the doors." The next few hours moved differently. There wasn't a big speech or an official memo, just his presence and a new tempo. The energy had shifted. The servers stood a little taller. Conversations at the register dropped in volume. The side comments and corner cutting vanished, replaced by a focused, quiet alertness. Tasha handled the front with calm authority, redirecting a couple of confused new hires with a patient nod and a few soft words. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. They listened. Jackson sat in the corner booth again, not eating, just watching. He saw how Tasha kept an eye on the drink station, made sure trays at the salad bar didn't run empty, and stepped in when a flustered teenager forgot how to process a refund. She moved like someone who had always been capable, just never been trusted. He also saw something else. Marla Jenkins, the manager, wasn't on the floor, not once during the lunch rush. She wasn't checking tables or walking the line. She hadn't spoken to Tasha since the team meeting. When Jackson eventually got up, he found her tucked in the back office behind a half-closed door, squinting at a spreadsheet. "Marla," he said, tapping lightly on the frame. She looked up, startled. "Oh, hi. I was just reviewing hours. You've been back here most of the morning." She gave a weak smile. "I've been trying to get ahead on next week's schedule." Jackson stepped inside. A printed copy of the weekly shift plan was spread across the desk, red pen scribbles running through nearly every name. Some blocks were double-marked. A few had question marks. Others had been scratched out completely. "This is the schedule for this week?" he asked. "Yes," Marla said. "I was cross-checking it against last week's call-outs and projected traffic." Jackson scanned the sheet. One name, Luis Ortega, had 4 doubles. Another had 3 partial shifts stitched together across 2 days. A few slots simply read, "Fill ASAP." "You're running the schedule too tight," he said. "I know," she replied quickly. "We've had a hard time getting applicants, and people leave without notice. Then I'm stuck patching holes." "Then flag it up," Jackson said. "That's what regional support is for." "I didn't think it would matter," she admitted. "Well, it does, especially now." Marla looked away. "I've just been trying to hold it together. I didn't want to come off like I couldn't handle it. You're not supposed to handle it alone." He picked up the schedule and pointed to one of the names. "This kid, Luis Ortega, has a double shift on Saturday and again on Monday. Is that sustainable?" Marla sighed. "Luis never says no. He's solid. He shows up, he works clean. And that's why you're leaning too hard on him. Same with Tasha. You got a couple of strong ones, and you're wearing them thin because you're afraid to ask for help." I didn't want to look like I was failing. "You're not failing," Jackson said. "You're operating without a system." He paused, setting the paper down. "You have potential leaders on your floor, but if they burn out, they'll walk. And once they do, this place falls apart again." Marla looked at him, the tension behind her eyes finally starting to crack. "What do you want me to do?" "First, stop hiding in the office." He said it gently, but it landed. "Second, change your hiring standards. Don't look for warm bodies. Look for values. Look for attitude. You can train the rest." "I've been so desperate to keep shifts filled." And that's how you ended up with someone like Chad calling the shots without a title. She nodded slowly. Jackson walked over to the whiteboard on the wall, wiped off a smudge menu reminder, and picked up a marker. Start grooming from within, he said, underlining the words as he wrote them. Tasha, Luis, probably one more we haven't noticed yet. Build your bench. If someone calls out, you've got coverage. If someone quits, you're not scrambling. I can work with that, Marla said quietly. Good. I'll schedule weekly check-ins with you for the next 2 months. We'll track turnover. If things don't improve, we'll revisit your role. She didn't flinch. Fair. Jackson gave a short nod. Let's get back out there. They stepped out together, back into the light of the dining room. The floor was clean. The soda fountain hummed steadily. Customers were starting to trickle in again, and this time, the whole place felt awake. Lunch had barely peaked when Jackson noticed the first real crack. From his corner of the dining room, he spotted Luis Ortega stepping back from the grill. His posture had shifted. The bounce of his step was gone. He leaned one hand against the prep counter, rolling his right ankle slightly as if trying to mask a limp. His apron was damp, his shirt clinging to his back, and a line of uncalled tickets still hung above the flat top. Jackson walked into the kitchen and opened a low cooler door beside him, pretending to check the stock. "You been on since open?" he asked casually. Luis nodded, not looking up. "Yeah." Jason called out again. "I think he quit." "You okay?" Luis exhaled through his nose. "Tweaked my knee last week, helping unload a truck. Still a little sore. I'm good." Jackson watched him for a beat. "You told anyone?" Luis shook his head. "It's not a big deal. If I don't show, there's no one else. I didn't want Tasha getting pulled back here again. She just got promoted. She deserves a break." Jackson glanced up at the row of tickets. The line wasn't slowing down. "Take 10, he said, removing a clean apron from a hook. "Sit down. Get off that knee." Luis hesitated. "You sure?" "Go." The younger man wiped his hands on a towel, moved slowly toward the break room, and disappeared to the swinging door. Jackson tied the apron around his waist, reached for a spatula, and slid into position. The rhythm came back faster than he expected. Muscle memory. Heat, sizzle, move left, flip, plate call. The line steadied. The noise of the dining room softened to a background hum, and the kitchen filled with a familiar cadence of working hands. A head poked through the service window. It was Tasha. She raised an eyebrow. "Didn't think I'd ever see the day." Jackson didn't pause. "You ever watch someone limp through a shift because they're too scared to ask for help?" Tasha adjusted a tray on her hip. "More often than I'd like. Then we got bigger problems in scheduling." By the time Louise came back, Jackson had cleared the board. Orders were up. Pans were restocked. The kid looked sheepish. "You run this place before or something?" he asked. Jackson handed the spatula back. "Something like that." Later that afternoon, Jackson found Marla Jenkins near the dry storage closet, checking off inventory with a clipboard in hand. He motioned for her to step into the hallway behind the kitchen, out of view from the team. "You have people working through injuries," he said. "Why wasn't that reported?" Marla lowered the clipboard. "Luis, he didn't tell me until yesterday. Said it was minor. I offered to send him home, but he refused. Said he didn't want to leave us shorthanded. That's not his call. That's yours." Marla sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. "We're light 3 people this week. I've been juggling the schedule since Monday. I didn't think it would go this far." "You're not a firefighter, Marla," Jackson said. "You don't let things burn just because you're short on hoses." She leaned against the wall, her voice lower. "I've been trying to patch holes everywhere. We lose one, I bring in another. They ghost. I'm tired, Jackson. I'm just trying to keep the doors open. Then you need support, and you're not going to get it if you hide the cracks." Marla hesitated, then met his eyes. I didn't want it to reflect poorly on me. "You think I care more about metrics than people collapsing on the line?" Her expression cracked, revealing shame, then relief. "No," she said. "I guess I just didn't want to look like I couldn't handle it. You're not supposed to carry all of this alone. Jackson crossed his arms. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You'll put in a request for 2 temporary cooks. You'll flag Luis's injury in the log, and you'll adjust his hours immediately. Cold prep and light duties only. Marlon nodded. Understood. And I want you to identify someone on the team to train for back-of-house coverage. Luis's potential, if you give him the right support. She straightened. You're serious. Dead serious. Jackson started back toward the kitchen, pausing only once to say, no more patchwork. I want structure. As he walked away, the smell of grilled chicken and warm cornbread followed him down the hallway. But what lingered more was the sound of someone finally exhaling behind him. The fix wouldn't be quick, but the shift had begun. Back on the floor, Jackson noticed a different kind of tension building near the dessert bar. A woman in her mid-40s stood over one of the servers, clipboard in hand, lips tight, voice sharp. Her badge identified her as Heather McCall, a corporate training consultant. Beside her stood Dylan Brooks, a new hire barely out of high school, his face flushed red and his eyes darting toward the ground. No, no, Heather snapped, tapping a laminated policy chart with her finger. That's not how you refill trays. I told you this 3 times already. You're not listening. Dylan's hands fumbled at the edge of a fresh pan of brownies. I thought I was following the chart. Then you didn't read it carefully enough, she cut in. It says right here, when a tray drops below half, you replace it. You don't top it off. That's lazy. Do it again. She didn't lower her voice. Customers within earshot turned to look. Jackson stepped in without warning. Everything all right here? Heather straightened, clearly surprised. Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize you were still on site. I am, Jackson said, and I'm watching how we treat our staff. Heather forced a smile. Just reinforcing compliance. He's still new. He's also not a punching bag, Jackson replied. His voice wasn't raised, but it carried weight. Heather stiffened. I wasn't trying to humiliate him. But you did, Jackson said plainly. You raised your voice. You pointed at him. You criticized him in front of customers. That's not training. That's intimidation. Heather's posture shifted. I apologize if it came across that way. I'll adjust my tone. You'll do more than that, Jackson said. You'll step away from the floor, effective immediately. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I'll have someone from HR follow up with you about your conduct, he added. We don't build teams by belittling them. Heather nodded once, picked up her clipboard, and walked briskly toward the back hallway. Dylan stood frozen. Jackson turned to him. You're doing fine, he said gently. If something doesn't make sense, ask Tasha or Luis. They've got your back. Dylan exhaled, like someone who hadn't breathed in a while. Thank you. Jackson gave a nod and stepped back toward the host stand. Just as he passed the entryway, he spotted a small girl standing beside the soda machine, holding a cracked plastic cup and blinking hard. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her shoes looked slightly too big, her jacket unzipped. He crouched beside her. You okay? She nodded. I spilled my drink. No big deal, Jackson said. Where's your table? She pointed toward the far corner, where a tired-looking couple was mid-conversation. The father glanced over, unsure whether to approach. Before Jackson could move, Tasha was already walking over with a towel and a fresh cup. She crouched down beside the girl, wiped the floor, handed over the drink, and whispered something that made the child smile. The father mouthed a quiet, "Thank you." Jackson stepped back, watching it unfold without interference. Moments later, he pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to the regional director. Need Tasha Green's personnel file. Start assistant manager onboarding next week. By late afternoon, the pace began to slow. Customers finished their meals. Servers bussed tables without being told. The noise softened into a warm, contented rhythm. There were no raised voices, no visible stress. The energy was no longer strained. It was steady. Jackson slipped briefly into the back office and scanned the staffing chart pinned to the wall. Half the names were flagged. Late arrivals, partial shifts, unconfirmed doubles. A few others had asterisks showing inconsistent availability. He picked up the phone and dialed directly to the regional support line. "I need 2 floaters assigned here starting tomorrow," he said. "One front of house, one back." The voice on the other end hesitated. "That'll make the Denton store short-staffed." "Then Denton needs to flag it earlier. I'd rather prevent a collapse than clean up after one." A pause. "Then copy that. We'll adjust the rotation." Jackson hung up and walked back on the floor. Near the register, Tasha was ringing up a couple in their 60s, smiling politely. Luis had moved off the grill and was calmly wiping down the prep table. Dylan was at the dessert bar again, this time carefully swapping out trays with quiet confidence. No clipboard in sight. The systems were still fragile, but something deeper was shifting. And for the first time in a long while, Jackson didn't feel like he was holding it all together alone. By mid-afternoon, the floor had found its rhythm. Tasha had become a fixture at the front, effortlessly managing the flow of guests, stepping in to cover the register when needed, and guiding a teenage server through her first-ever table assignment. She didn't make it about herself. She simply noticed what needed doing and did it. In the back, Louis stayed off the grill per Jackson's orders, working the cold station instead. His movements were slower than usual, but more deliberate. Jackson watched him restock coleslaw containers, rotate labels in the walk-in fridge, and check inventory sheets without being asked. He moved like someone with a sense of ownership. Later in the day, a woman in a Navy school security jacket walked in, holding a folded takeout menu. Her shoes were worn, her eyes tired. She stepped up to the counter and glanced between the trays and her wallet, clearly trying to do the math. Tasha approached gently. "Can I help you find something?" "I've only got about $6, the woman said, embarrassed. "I just need something to take home. Maybe a couple sides." Tasha nodded. "Tell you what, we have a community plate we offer when we can. You pick 3 hot items you like, and I'll pack it to go." The woman blinked. "Really?" Tasha just smiled. "Really?" Jackson stood nearby, watching quietly. No grand gestures, no spotlights, just kindness, quietly delivered again. Back in the office, he scanned the updated staffing printout Marla had left on the desk. There were still gaps, but the changes were already showing. The next few shifts were tighter. There were no open doubles. 2 temp workers had been scheduled. Tasha's name now sat in a bolded box marked, shadowing management track. There was breathing room. And now, it was time for the one-on-ones. No clipboards, no HR forms, just conversations. Tasha was first. She sat across from Jackson in the break room, hands folded, her posture steady. "What's the hardest part of your job?" Jackson asked. She didn't hesitate. "Feeling like I'm the only one who notices when something's broken." Jackson nodded. "You're not anymore." "It feels different now," she said, her eyes sharper. "Not easier, just like it matters again." "You still want to move into management?" "I do, but not if it means turning into someone who stops listening." He leaned forward. "It won't, but it will mean holding the line, even when no one's watching. Are you ready for that?" "I think I already have been." Jackson smiled. "Starting next week, you'll shadow Marla. Payroll, scheduling, vendor calls. I want you to understand the back end of this place before you ever take it on. I'll be ready." He paused. "And if you ever feel like something's going sideways, staff, customers, even above store level, you come to me directly." She raised an eyebrow. "You're giving me your number?" "I don't give it to many, but I don't want to lose you." She didn't smile right away, just nodded, quiet and stunned, before standing and walking out to prep for the dinner rush. Next came Luis. He moved slower, but the limp had softened. His eyes were wary when he sat, as if he wasn't sure if he was in trouble. "I owe you something," Jackson said. Luis looked confused. "What for?" "For not protecting your health. You shouldn't have felt like staying on the line was your only option." Luis shifted. "I didn't want to lose hours." "You won't. We're adjusting your schedule and paying you in full through the week. Cold prep and light duties until you're back to full speed." Luis stared at him. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I do, Because this place only works if people feel safe. If I let you burn out, I'm setting a fire I'll have to put out later. Luis nodded slowly. Thanks. That means a lot. One more thing, Jackson added. Once you're healed, I want you to train with the back of house lead. Luis blinked. Me? You got instincts. You don't panic. You adapt. That's rare. Luis rubbed the back of his neck, unsure what to say. I want to invest in it, Jackson said simply. The final conversation was with Marla. She entered the break room with a binder tucked under one arm and a stack of updated logs in the other. Before she could sit, Jackson held up a hand. Leave the papers. Let's just talk. She hesitated, then set everything down and sat. You've been here longer than most, Jackson said. You've seen this place through some rough seasons. I've tried to keep it going with what I had, she said. Honestly, I believe that. But trying isn't enough anymore. You need to lead it forward, not just keep it from collapsing. She nodded. I stopped pushing up the chain when it got hard. I got too used to just surviving. Well, that changes now. I'll be checking in every 2 weeks. Not to micromanage, to partner. I can work with that. You have 1 quarter to stabilize staffing and build a bench. Tasha, Luis, maybe one more. Grow them. Marlon nodded again. Understood. And if you do that, there's a regional restructure coming. If you prove you can build leaders, there's a spot for someone like you. Her face shifted, the strain replaced by a sense of direction. I won't waste a chance, she said. Then let's stop talking, Jackson replied, standing, and get back to work. And this time, Marla followed him back onto the floor, not from behind, but beside him. By the time the sun dipped low across the East Columbus lot, the last wave of dinner guests had started to filter in. Tasha stood behind the register, calmly ringing up a young couple and their toddler, who pointed excitedly at the dessert display. Her voice was steady, her movements clean. She smiled without forcing it. Behind her, Dylan refilled the apple cobbler trays, carefully wiping the edges like he'd been doing for years. Luis had taken over the cold prep table again, loading small salad containers for the go line, while humming under his breath. There was still a slight hitch in his step, but it no longer dragged him down. Jackson leaned against the wall near the host stand, hands in his pockets. He didn't give instructions, didn't check his phone. He just watched. A quiet cohesion had settled over the space. No shouting, no tension, just a hum of equipment, the soft clatter of plates, an occasional sound of laughter from Table 7, where a large family passed around cornbread. Later, as the dinner crowd thinned, a woman stepped through the entrance, hesitating just inside the door. She was in her mid-40s, a school security badge clipped to her windbreaker. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her shoulders stooped as if she hadn't had time to breathe all day. She stepped up to the counter and unfolded a few worn bills from her pocket. "I've only got $6," she said softly. "Anything you could box up? Maybe some sides." Tasha didn't hesitate. "We have a community plate option when we're able," she said gently. "You pick 3 of your favorite hot items, and I'll pack it for you. No charge." The woman blinked. "Really? Really?" No one else reacted. No one needed to. It wasn't a favor anymore. It was the standard. Jackson stepped away, letting the moment belong to them. By closing time, the place moved like clockwork. Chairs were lifted and floors were swept without reminders. Dylan scrubbed down the dessert station while humming something off-key. Luis double-checked the cold stock list without being asked. No one lingered on their phones. No one barked orders. Everyone simply did the work. Jackson grabbed his coat from the office and stepped out one last time into the dining area. The lights had dimmed slightly, casting a warm, amber glow over the space. Tasha wiped down the front counter. Marla reviewed the final receipt tape at the register. Luis was already gone, his adjusted shift having ended earlier than usual. Jackson approached the front, watching the team close the place with calm, practiced efficiency. "You all did good work today," he said. Tasha looked up. It felt different. "That's because you made it different," Jackson replied. He turned to Marla. "Keep this momentum. Don't wait for things to break, to start leading." "I won't," she said. Jackson nodded. pulled his keys from his pocket, and made his way to the door. "Hey, Mr. Reeves," Tasha called after him. He turned. "Thanks," she said, "for not just showing up to punish people, for staying long enough to help fix it." Jackson gave a small nod. "Fixing it was the easy part," he said. "Keeping it right, that's on all of us." He stepped out into the cool evening air. The neon sign above the buffet had been repaired earlier that morning. No more flickering. No more apologetic hum. Just a steady, clear light shining above the front window. A small thing, but it mattered. Jackson paused at the edge of the lot and turned once more to look inside. No more secondhand reports. No more blind spots. If this company was going to grow, it would grow with eyes open, hands dirty, and hearts engaged. He unlocked his car, started the engine, and drove away without fanfare. Inside, the closing crew finished their final sweep. No shortcuts, no shouting, just quiet, steady work. The kind that builds something worth keeping. Sometimes leadership isn't about stepping in. It's about stepping back so others can rise. What defines a company isn't what it serves, but how it serves the people others forget. And kindness, the kind that expects nothing back, doesn't just save one day. It can change everything.